Okay, everybody, now we're really getting to the heart of working with WordPress. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you step by step through the whole process of publishing a brand new blog post. So if you are brand new to WordPress, or even if you've been using WordPress for a little while and you're not 100% comfortable with it, and you feel like you could use a little bit more hand-holding in the visual editor area, then this is the right tutorial for you. So we're going to go slowly through this and make sure that you understand everything that you're seeing in the visual editor. So this is what your screen looks like when you first log into WordPress. We've talked about this a little bit already. And to put up a new post, you're going to go to Posts over here and then go to Add New. And you're going to see a screen that looks sort of like a blank slate like this. And this is called your visual editor. This is just sort of a WordPressy kind of term for an individual page or post that you're looking at in WordPress. And we are going to make a distinction here between blog posts and pages in WordPress. WordPress allows you to put up content in two different places. You can either put it in as a blog post or you can put it in as a page. And your pages are going to be things like your about page, where you give a bio of yourself or a description of your company or your book or whatever it happens to be, or your contact page where there's a form or an email address that they can get in touch with you. Typically, stuff that you see across the top of the page in a navigation bar area like this is going to be a page. Not always, but most of the time. And blog posts are going to be the new pieces of content that usually come up either in the home page or in your blog area. So anything that's sort of regular ongoing content that you're putting up on a regular basis about a particular topic or your industry, that's typically going to go into a post. Anything that needs to be sort of standalone content like an about page that typically doesn't get comments on it, it really needs to just sort of stand on its own and usually not be time stamped, that's going to go on a page in WordPress. And the screens look very, very similar. So we're going to tackle posts first, and then I'm going to give you a brief overview of how to do pages because they work in almost an identical way. There's a couple of really small things that are different, but it's almost identical. So we're now looking at a fresh visual editor page. And in WordPress, one of the first things it wants you to do is put up a title for your brand new post. So I'm going to call this Bootcamp Post 1. All right, and then what I want you to do is just move your cursor down into this area here, which is where the main body of your text is going to go. Now, this is the title that's going to appear at the top of your post. So this is something that other people are going to see. And as we talk about headlines in our next module, this is where the headline of your post goes. So you use title and headline kind of interchangeably here. So this is a place where you really want to put some time and energy into coming up with something really catchy. And I'll give you further instructions about doing that in our next module. But for now, I just want you to take note that this is where it goes. I also want you to pay attention to where it put in a permalink here, and it did that automatically based on what you put in this title field. You want to try to keep these short though, because if someone's trying to share your post on social media, in particular Twitter, where they give you a really short amount of characters to use and they don't give you a lot of time or a lot of and they don't give you a lot of space to put your URL, then you want to make these URLs as short as possible to make them really super easy to share. So what it does is just takes the beginning of your domain, this part, and then tacks on your blog post title at the end with hyphens in between each of the words. And your post headlines might be really long. You might say 7 ways to make sure you take a dream vacation in 2016, even when you're traveling with a toddler. So that's a great eye-catching headline, perhaps, but you don't necessarily want to have that all in your permalink. So you want to edit the permalink by clicking here just on the edit button, and then you can make this whatever you want. So you might take a couple words out, bootcamp post, all of that. You want to keep them to probably no more than 2 to 4 words at the end here. It's always going to tack on your domain at the beginning of it, but keep the slug, which is this last part here, that's what it's called. You want to keep it to 2 to 4 words. Just make it as short as you can and still have it make sense, of course. And then when you're done editing, you just click on OK. And then I'm going to have you put your cursor again down here in this main content area. Now, I'm going to copy over some text that we can use just so we have something to work with. I've got a text generator that I use for web projects, and so I'm just going to paste a big chunk of text here just so that we have something to work with and something to format. You might want to do your blog posts, your page content, that kind of thing in a Word document or something similar because I prefer writing in a Word document or a text editor even and copying it over to here. Usually you don't have a problem with doing that. You can usually just copy and paste. So we're just going to have this text in here to work with right now. And now I'm going to teach you how to do some formatting, how to add some hyperlinks, that kind of thing, using all of our WordPress options. And what you see at the beginning here is just a list of different what we call toolbar buttons. And they're going to look really similar if you use Microsoft Word or another word processor. A lot of these buttons are kind of universal. So I'm going to go through the first couple of them fairly quickly because they don't require a whole lot of explanation. And then we'll get into some of the nitty gritty of more of our blogging tools as we move on here. So our first one is just to bold a particular word. And with all of these, you would just highlight a word and then just hit the button to bold it. And I'll do it again here with italic. And then one more time with a strike through. And then let's put in some potential bullet points here. I'm just going to work with our text a little bit here to put in some bullet points. All right, so let's say we wanted to make this a bulleted list. We could just hit bulleted list, and you'll notice that as I hover all of these toolbar buttons, a little black explanation bar comes up. So if you ever get lost here and you don't feel like picking back through this whole video, you can just hover over it and it'll give you a little description of what the button is for. So we can hit bulleted list. Of course, we highlight our whole section first and hit bulleted list, and then it'll turn it into bullets. If we wanted to make that a numbered list, we can highlight it and just hit numbered list, which is the button right next to it. Okay? And that turns it into a numbered list. And you can do that throughout your post. People like bullet points in blog posts. They like listed, like a 1, 2, 3, a numbered list. They like that as well. So if you can add those, it helps to break it up visually. It's definitely not a bad idea. So I'm going to take this out. And then to undo it, you just highlight it again and you hit the numbered list button again and it'll take that out for us. So the next button here is a block quote. This is a little bit different from regular Microsoft Word or another word processor. And all this is going to do is just break out the text a little bit and make it look like a quote. So when you are quoting from another website, a book, a magazine, basically anywhere else, and you want to take a paragraph of that and quote it, it's a good idea to put it in a block quote kind of format. And so all we're going to do is highlight a whole paragraph here. I like to highlight a whole paragraph by just clicking 3 times on a paragraph. For those of you who didn't know, you can highlight any word by clicking twice on it, and then highlight any paragraph just by clicking 3 times. Really handy, saves a ton of time. So I just highlighted this whole paragraph, and I'm going to make it into a block quote. And you can see that it's offset just a little bit and it has italicized. Now when we're going to do a preview in just a sec of what this post looks like, you're going to see that possibly depending on our theme, this might look a little bit different than the rest of our text. It might have a sort of stylized quotation mark around it. It all depends on what the theme has decided to do with this block quote style. So we're going to see that in just a sec. But for now, all you need to do is remember that if you'd like to offset something and make it more look like something you're quoting from someone else, all you have to do is just highlight the paragraph and then hit block quote. And then there's kind of a cool option here if you'd like to add a horizontal line anywhere in your text, which can come in handy for things like sales pages or any content that has a couple of parts or pieces to it. It's nice to be able to have a nice clean line that you can add really easily. And all you have to do is just set your cursor where you'd like the line to be and then hit horizontal line. And you can just barely see it in gray here, but it is there, and that will add a horizontal line to the front page of your site when we hit save. And then these next 3 are pretty standard. It's align left, align center, and align right. Almost always you're going to go with align left, and that is the default. If you have a headline or something special that you're adding that needs to be centered, every now and then you can use your center button. Like if I wanted to make this line centered, all I have to do again is highlight it and then just hit align center, and it'll just center it just like that, just like Microsoft Word document would. All right, our next one is a little bit more WordPress specific, and this is to insert a link. So if you would like to link the word cupcake to somewhere else on the web, all we have to do is highlight it, and it can be a word, a phrase, a sentence, even a whole paragraph, although I don't really recommend that. All you have to do is highlight a section of your text, and then you can turn it into a nice, clean hyperlink. And all we have to do, again, highlight our word or phrase, and we hit insert or edit link. It'll give you a pop-up box that looks like this. So let's say I'd like to add a link just to the homepage of Google, just for a test sake here. And what you always want to remember is you have to add your HTTP colon slash slash to the beginning. If you just add the www Google part, then it won't become a live link. It's going to be a broken link. So you want to be careful to always remember your HTTP. And then I always like to open my links in a new window or tab because it makes it a little bit cleaner for your viewers experience. You don't want to ever make a viewer or reader hit the back button to get back to your site. You don't want to make them work that hard. So I do like to just click that pretty much on everything that I'm adding here. And when you're done with that, you can just click on add link. And now the word cupcake is a link to Google. And what this saves you from having to do is add an ugly looking link in the middle. Like let's say I wanted to link to Copyblogger. I'm going to use these guys as an example in just a minute. If I wanted to link to them, one way I could link to them is just by copying and pasting this ugly looking, URL permalink here. I could put that right in here if I wanted to, but it's ugly. We want to use hyperlinks to make your text look cleaner. And what it's going to do on the front end is it's probably going to make the link a special color, and it might underline it as well. But somehow that is going to it's going to stand out so that your readers know that it is a link. And then if we want to take this link out, we can just double click on it again to highlight it. And then you can either click the X button here to remove it, or you can hit the remove link button up here in your toolbar. I'm going to keep it in for now because I want to see how that looks when we go to preview the page in just a minute. But let's keep plowing on here. And then I'm going to get back to your read more button in just a sec because it's a little bit more complicated. I'd like to show you that one at the end. And then at the very end here, you have a toggle toolbar button. And believe it or not, all this does is hides the lower row of buttons. So when you hit it, to make them appear, and then you can hit it to hide it again. Usually I use the second row of buttons enough that I always just keep it open. I don't bother closing it every time, but if you like a cleaner look here in your visual editor, you can certainly keep it closed and just toggle that back and forth when you need it. So that's a nice little stopping place where we can go ahead and just save our work, because you want to be saving as you go along, especially if you're working on a long post. So what we're going to do is just hit save draft over here. If we're not ready to publish yet, but we just want to save our work and, put it down and say, yes, this is definitely what I want. I don't want to save it. Then you just hit your save draft button. And as soon as you've hit save draft, you can also use your preview button over here, which gives you a view of what it looks like on the front end before you commit and hit publish. And you always want to make sure you're previewing your posts, especially if you're using pictures or you've got block quotes or bulleted lists, any kind of fancy formatting. You always want to make sure you preview it. So we've hit save draft, and we get a notification here at the top that says post draft updated, and you can either hit preview post here or you can hit preview over here to get a little sneak peek at what your post is going to look like. So it opened it in a new tab for me here, and it takes just a bit for this preview to come up. So this is what it's going to look like for me here, okay? And you can see a couple things that I've done. Number one, well, first of all, you can see the bold and the italic and the strike through here at the top and see what they look like. But the word cupcake is a link to Google, so I'm hoping you can see that. It's a little bit different color. Actually, it's a little subtle. I'd probably prefer that were a little bit brighter, but this is just what the theme has decided to do with hyperlinks. So it is blue, and when we click on it, it sends us right to the homepage of Google, which is what we wanted, so that's good. And then you can see here where it says toffee jelly beans cake. This paragraph is what our block quote looks like. So it's larger text, it's a little bit indented, and you can see this light gray bar down the side of it as well. So, and then you also can see our horizontal bar right here, and that's about as far as we got for this first preview. So it is a good idea to go ahead and save as a draft as you're going along and preview as you're going along, although you probably could save your preview process for the very end, but it is important that you hit save draft. One thing I'd like to clarify, hitting Command S or saving in any other way other than using the save draft button, anything that you would normally do in Microsoft Word to save will not necessarily work. In fact, it usually doesn't work in WordPress. You must hit the save draft button. I've had clients who have lost whole, 2,000 word posts because they thought they were saving as they went along and it turns out they weren't. So please, please, please save as you go and only use the save draft button as you go. All right, so let's get into our second row of buttons here. Our very first one here has to do with the style of each of these lines and has to do with the size of the font. So WordPress does not allow you to change the font size point by point. Like in Microsoft Word, you could take a line of your text and say, I'd like this to be 35 point font. You can't do that in WordPress. They want to have more control over it because they like your post to look nice and clean and they want you to stay within the styles of the theme. So they give you these options for trying to create a larger or a smaller font size, but they don't let you do it by 20 point font, 25 point font, etc. So you want to use these sparingly and you want to use them thoughtfully. But just to show you what this could look like, I'm just going to take this line right here and make it into, let's use heading 3. And it's going to look a little bit bigger and bold here in our visual editor, but we're not going to really know what it looks like until we hit preview and see what it looks like on the front end, because this is not necessarily a good representation of what the front end of your site is going to look like and how it actually renders in your theme. So to preview this, we hit preview. Okay, and it looks like it's just a tiny bit bigger. Might be a couple points bigger, and I think it's actually the same font. It's just a larger version of it. Sometimes the styles will bold a style, or sometimes the theme will bold a style, or make it italic, or do something else like all caps or something like that. And it really depends on what's going on behind the scenes in your theme. So you can play around with all of these different ones and see if any of them appeal to you for things like subheadings. If you have a long post and you want to break it out into subheadings, I want you to try something like heading 3 or heading 4 just to make that subhead stand out a little bit in your post. The only one that I really don't want you to use is heading 1, because heading 1 is specific to your blog post headline. So if you add something in the middle of your post and then say, hey, this is supposed to be heading 1, it's going to look like there's a brand new post and it's going to look odd to your reader and it's going to make it hard for them to read. But short of that, you can experiment with these and see if there's things that you like in here, and they're going to vary from theme to theme. So if these are driving you crazy and you can't find ones you like, change over to a new theme like I taught you in the last video and experiment a little bit with those and see if you can find ones you like. So that's your paragraph drop down here. This is sort of like your style drop down. And then we've got an underline box that's pretty straightforward. We have a justify button, which is justifying and making it line up. You're making your whole column line up on both sides like a newspaper column. I would highly recommend keeping your hands off this button. Newspaper kind of formatting looks really odd and it messes up the spacing. It's very hard on your reader. So definitely avoid this button. And then you have a button here that'll let you change the color of the text. So again, you just highlight a word and then you can pick through here and pick these colors. I believe there's a custom button, yeah, that'll allow you to put in your RGB numbers or your hex number if you have a special one that you'd like to use. You can do that, or you can just use the color picker. So let me just pick a red here and then hit OK. And now our gingerbread word is in red. All right, the paste as text button, this is something I want you to use only if you actually gives us an error there. This used to be someplace you could use if you're having trouble pasting from Microsoft Word or from somewhere else. You could use this. It looks like that option is turned off in this latest version of WordPress, so I'm not sure why they kept the button. So I guess at this point you can probably ignore that button. It's not going to do much for you. And then if you want to strip out formatting from big sections, let's say you've got a bulleted list that looks really wonky, or you just have something that's gone really funny and you want to take a whole section or even your whole blog post and and strip out the formatting. This is going to take things out like your header 3 here. It should take out things like your block quote right here, and you should just be able to highlight a whole section of your text like so, and then hit clear formatting or remove formatting. This is supposed to be an eraser on this button. Sometimes I find it takes out some of it, but not others. I find it interesting on that. It didn't take out the H3, but it did take out my bold and my color and things like that in this early text. So not foolproof, but it can sometimes be helpful if you've really bunged up a post. It's not a bad idea to at least try it if you need to rip out some of that formatting and start over. All right, and our next button here is for special characters. This is for things like a trademark sign, registered trademark, TM and R. You can also use a copyright symbol here, and there's a whole bunch of special characters. So the thing you want to do is just place your cursor first where you would like this special character to be, and then you can hit the special character button, and it gives you all these options for different things you can use. Everything from like check marks to, I think there's Roman numerals somewhere in here. There's all kinds of things. Registered trademark, British pound sign. There's probably a euro sign in here somewhere. So all you need to do is just select whatever you'd like to add there, and it'll put it right where your cursor was. So you can see it just added this mathematical symbol that I feel like I should know the name of and I don't remember. Okay, so that's what you do with special characters. This is one of those buttons that people will call me 6 months after we've launched their blog and they'll say, I know you told me where to put or to find a registered trademark button and I can't remember where it is. So that's where it is. And if you want to, you can just delete it just by hitting your delete button, just like you would with a regular character. All right, and we're coming up on the home stretch here for our toolbar buttons. This button works very similar to Microsoft Word. If we want to highlight a whole paragraph and then indent it, we could put increase indent, and all it's going to do is take that paragraph and move it in. As you saw, as soon as I did that, it moved the bottom paragraph too. So sometimes you have to fight with it a little bit. If you're used to fighting with Microsoft Word and their formatting, shouldn't be anything new to you. I think WordPress is a little bit easier to use. It doesn't fight you quite as much, but sometimes it does things like that where it's like, oh, you want that paragraph too? I'll move that as well. So just be aware that it'll do that. And hopefully when I do decrease indent, it'll take that paragraph with it as well. And then you just hit the decrease indent button right here and it takes it back out. And yes, indeed, it did take that paragraph with it. So play around with that a little bit if you want to. And the difference between this, which is a block quote, and what we just did with indenting here is that the block quote adds special formatting. You know, it made the font bigger, it made it italicized, and it put the little gray line down to the left. If you indent just this paragraph, all it'll do is just take it in one tab. That's all it's going to do. So that's the difference between the two. Then we have our handy undo and redo buttons here. You can undo the last action that you did and then redo it if you want to. Works the same as Microsoft Word. Do know that as soon as you've saved, you can't go back again. So you can't hit the undo button 5 times and get back to where you were if you've already saved that change. It's not going to let you do it, but it is handy if you did something and you're like, oh, no, I didn't want to do that. Just hit your undo button and you should be able to back out of at least 1 or 2 actions. And then this is a list of keyboard shortcuts. These can be kind of cool within WordPress, and these are specific to WordPress. So if you want to print these out and keep them with you, they can really speed up what you do in your blogging tool. So these are really handy. So there's a list of them right there for you. And that is it for our toolbars. And again, you can just click your button here to toggle the lower button or lower row of buttons if you want to. And then the next thing I want to talk to you about is pictures. So right now, what I'm going to do just for simplicity's sake is take out the section here that I've really sort of messed around with the formatting, and I'm going to get us down to something closer to sort of normal article layout. Let me get this back to where it was. All right, and now I've got 3 paragraphs of sort of straight up kind of text, and then we're ready to add a picture. Now, what I do tell people is that it's a good idea to take a nice deep breath, or maybe even have a strong drink before you start adding pictures in WordPress, because I will warn you, it takes a bit of patience and takes some finagling sometimes. And there are times when you feel like you need to fight with WordPress a little bit. So just take a deep breath, go into it knowing it might take some time to get it right, but when you do, pictures can be gorgeous on WordPress, so it is worth the time. Just know that you might have to, summon your patience in order to do it. Couple of guidelines that you need before you even start to go through the process of adding a picture. Things work best in WordPress when you've got one or two pictures and a fair bit of text. Or if you've got a long post, it is okay to add a bunch of pictures. Where people get themselves in trouble is in situations like these where I've only got 3 paragraphs of text and I want to add 5 or 6 pictures. And I want those pictures to wrap. And when I mean wrap, I'd be, what I'm saying is like a picture would be just on this left side and the text would be wrapping around it. That is going to be difficult for you to pull off if you don't have enough text to wrap around the photos. And you also need to be kind of flexible about where those photos are and how the words are wrapping around them if you choose to use word wrap. So you may not always have perfect control over how the words and the picture line up as far as the word wrap because it's going to render differently on different browsers. So I want you to kind of keep an open mind when it comes to adding pictures and know that less is more in some ways. There may be some circumstances if you're a food blogger or someone who relies heavily on photos, then there are things that you can do to add a bunch of photos even with a lot of text. But for the most part, what I want you to do is have more text and fewer photos, with certain exceptions. But for the most part, that's the rule of thumb that I want you to use. And because we really want to use large photos, because we want our photos nice and big for social media, we're going to talk a lot more about social media in Module 4 and get a lot more into that. But for now, I want you thinking you really want to use large pictures that for the most part go the whole way across your column. So think big when we're talking about pictures. And so what I want you to do to start is just put your cursor in the general neighborhood top to bottom of where you'd like the photo to be. And in this case, I want it right at the top of our post. So I'm going to put it directly to the left of the word gingerbread. And you can see my cursor blinking there right to the left of that word. When you've got your cursor set, you can hit Add Media. And then we're going to upload a new photo. Now, sometimes when you get to this screen, you will see that you're in the media library first. And so you might see something that looks like this. If you are in the media library area, if it throws you into that accidentally, just go to Upload Files, the tab up here. And then it wants us to go and search on our computers for a photo that we'd like to upload. So I'm going to select one from my images file here. I keep sort of a file of stock photos. And I'm going to look for one that's not terribly, terribly big. Some photos that come from your computer, or some from your own digital camera, I mean, are going to be absolutely huge. So just remember, you do not need a 7,000 pixel wide photo in order to go into WordPress. If you can pick something that's around 7 or 800 pixels wide, that's perfect. We can always size something down, but you also don't want to make it too big because WordPress actually does have a breaking point where it just won't accept an upload of a gigantic, gigantic picture. So let me just pick one. Okay, let's go with this cherry blossom one. And when we select this, you just need to go and search for it wherever it is on your hard drive, and then you're going to click on open. And then you'll see it'll upload here, and when it's fully uploaded, you're going to see a little check mark here. Don't worry that it's cropped. It doesn't mean your picture is cropped, it's just giving you a little preview. All right, and then I want you to put in a title for your photo, and you can either put something like cherry blossom in bloom to describe the photo, or if you want to, you can put the title of your post here. We're going to talk about that more in Module 4. If you want to add a caption here, you can, although they end up looking sometimes kind of funny in certain browsers, so I usually advise you not to. And then again, you can put an alt text here, which is just sort of what people are going to see if the photo hasn't loaded yet. And I usually just make the title and the alt text the same. All right, and now under display settings here, alignment, this has to do with your word wrap that we were talking about a minute ago. I don't want this photo to wrap. I want it the whole way across the top of our content column here. So I'm going to just click on none. And then it often wants to resize. If it's a decent sized photo, it'll often suggest that you use a medium sized one instead. Our full size here is 1280 pixels wide, which is pretty big. So I'm actually going to go with large, and then I'm probably going to size it down even a little bit further than that. So we'll go with large. And again, you want to shoot for like somewhere around 7 or 800 pixels wide if you're going full width for your content column. That's usually a good place to start. And when we're done with all of this, we click Insert into Post. Now we've got a really big photo across the top now, and I can downsize it a little bit. And the way you do that is just by selecting the photo. I just clicked on it once, and you know when you see these little boxes in the corner of your photo, that means that you have clicked on it and you can edit it. And in WordPress, it lets you grab the corner of the photo. I just put my cursor right over that little box, and then it turned into a little arrow you can see. And all I'm doing is just dragging and making it a little bit smaller. And you can see that black box there that's giving my pixels the dimensions of the photo. I'm going to go 646 and see how that looks. And then I actually want to click on it one more time, and I'm going to center the photo. So you just click on it, and then you click Align Center just to align it, and put it in the center, just like you would with any other text. This gingerbread line looks like it's really mashed up against my photo, so I'm just going to put my cursor again to the left of the word gingerbread and just hit my return once to try to get the spacing of that a little bit better. But voila, now you have a picture in your blog post. We're going to talk more about creating images for your blog posts, being a little bit more creative with the images that you embed, but I just wanted you to get the basic gist of that. Where it gets tricky, and the reason I said have some patience, is if you're using word wrap, that can take some patience. Sometimes the sizing of it can be kind of funky. Sometimes it goes really smoothly, like it did just there, and sometimes it doesn't. So just know that if you really bunch something up, you can actually delete the photo completely and re-upload a new one if you want to. And that sometimes it takes a couple of shots at this in order to get the photos 100% correct and looking the way that you want. So this is another good place to go ahead and save our draft. And it says post draft updated, and then let's hit a preview just to see how our photo looks across the top here. Okay, so that's a nice big photo. It looks like it's centered well there. I think we're looking pretty good there, and we could probably even stand, if we wanted to put another photo in the center if it was full width like that, and even another one at the bottom if we wanted. Images can really, really help to sell posts, so if you have them, you can add them. Just don't go too crazy with trying to add way, way too many images without enough text, especially if you're trying to do a word wrap kind of thing. If we wanted to, we could make this photo a lot smaller. Let me just show you how the word wrap would work. I can make this a lot smaller. Let's just make it really small. And then when I click on it, you see these edit buttons that come up here. If I wanted it to align left, meaning I want the photo on the left side of the screen and the words to wrap around it on the right, I can hit align left. And then you can see it just popped it in here and wrapped the words around it. And when we hit save draft again, and then let's hit our preview button again, and just see what that looks like. So that's a nice small photo. I've got a spacing issue up at the top here, probably because I added that line in between the picture and the text, so I can get rid of that. But for the most part, that's not looking too bad. I think that photo is a little small for social media, like that's a little too small to use for Pinterest. So I would really prefer that you use full width photos, the ones that take up a lot of space width-wise across the top of the column. But if you do want to use that word wrap, that's how you would go about using it. So that's adding images, and you already know how to use your save draft and your preview buttons because we've been doing that as we go along. Now I want to talk about your publishing options, which are over on this side. So we've got some options here that are really quite handy in a lot of different scenarios. So your status right now is that this is a draft. We've been hitting save draft as we go along. And then there are a couple other of statuses in here. If you want to, you can put pending review and then hit OK. This is mostly for group blogs where there's multiple authors, and you can mark something as pending and then say to your editor, hey, it's ready to go in there and it's pending. Not really handy for most folks. You're probably going to keep it as draft. One thing that is nice about this status here is that if for some reason you had published a post and you needed to take it down in order to change or update something, you can take it down immediately by pulling it back into draft format, which is really handy. So you could, if we had published this post already, we'd have an option here to turn it back into draft and then click OK, which can be handy in very specific circumstances. Your visibility right now is that this post is public. We can edit that, and we can do password protected, which is really cool. So this is how I password protected your class page. So when you guys hit the class page for Content Creation Bootcamp, you need to enter a password to do it, and this is where I set that. And so you can do that here. I don't usually do that with posts, because if I'm going to put something in my blog post area, then I want everybody to see it. But it is very handy when it comes to pages. So I do class pages for all of my classes. I do pages sometimes for some of my clients, and I want them to be password protected so that the search engines can't find them and other people can't read them. So I think this is really handy. So you can just hit password protected. And then your other choice is public. And I don't use private because it does something funny with notifications. It's sort of like it tells people that the post is there, but then it doesn't let them look at it, which is really annoying. So either stick with making it public or making it password protected. So we're going to hit cancel and just make that public. This shows our number of revisions. We've saved it probably 4 times at this point, and we could, if we wanted to, go back and browse all of those revisions. This can be amazing. If you have really messed a post up and you know that 10 minutes ago or yesterday it looked just fine, going back and being able to browse through these revisions is incredibly handy. So just know all is not lost. If you have deleted a whole post accidentally and then saved it, you can go back and look at previous revisions. So keep in mind that that is here. And then this is really nice too. This is when you publish the post. The default is if you hit publish right now, it's going to put up this post immediately. It's going to say, okay, you hit publish, and we're going to go ahead and push it out to the world right now. If you wanted, though, to set the publish date for a week from now or 2 days from now, this is where you would set that. So you click the edit button here next to publish immediately. You can set the date right here, so you can change the month and the day and the year. And in here in military time, you can tell it exactly when you would like it to publish. So if you're going on vacation for a month and you would like to continue to publish content during the entire month that you're gone, you can conceivably queue up pretty much as many posts as you want during that month and then just set this publication date to be a certain day. We're going to cancel out of this, but what you'd have to do is just set your date and then click OK. And then this button, instead of saying publish, it would say schedule. So you do need to set the date and hit the schedule button in order to officially put it in the queue. But for now, we're just going to cancel out of this, and it's still going to say publish, meaning publish immediately. All right, and then don't worry about this SEO stuff. That has to do with something in my theme. All right, if you wanted to trash the whole post, you could do that here by moving it to trash. But we're going to go ahead and hit publish on this in just 1 second. For now, we're just going to hit save draft one more time because I want to encourage you to save as you go along. The last thing I want to show you here that's really important in this visual editor screen, there's a lot of other stuff that's floating around in the bottom here, and most of it honestly is stuff that you don't need to pay much attention to. We're going to get to the Yoast SEO box during Module 4, so I don't want you to worry about that for right now. But the only other thing I really want you to pay attention to is this categories box right here. When you're doing a blog post, you can set a particular category for that post. So if I know I'm going to be writing about blogging and webinars and email marketing and Pinterest, I can set up categories for all 4 of those things. And that way people can get around in my content a little bit easier, and they can browse just the topics that are interesting to them. So this is handy. I recommend that you do it. And so right now we only have one category, and it's called uncategorized, and WordPress is just stuffing all of our new posts into uncategorized because we haven't told them any different. So we want to add a new category here, and let's just call this email marketing for lack of a better example. So you just type in your category name, ignore this parent and child thing down here. You're going to have all parent categories, and then you hit add new category. Okay, I want you to uncheck uncategorized every time. So from now until forever after, your goal is to not have anything be stuffed into the uncategorized category, because it sort of makes you look like you're not paying attention as a content creator, which is what you don't want. So you want to categorize every single post. If you wanted to categorize it as 2 different things, you can do that too. If I wanted to say I want it to be under email marketing and webinars, I could do that as well. So I just added webinars as a category, and now they're both checked, which is really handy. You don't want to go over any more than about 10 to 15 categories max. So these don't need to be super, detailed and really tiny categorized. Categories, you just keep them broad. All right, so no more than 10 to 15 here. And if you can keep them under 10, that would be great. A lot less confusing for your reader. All right, so we've gone through formatting your post. You know about the toolbars, you've added an image, you're all set with your title across the top here, your headline. You know about your publishing options. Now we're ready to go ahead and hit publish. So when we hit publish, it thinks, you get a little spinning wheel here for a sec, and it says post published, and then you can view your brand new, newly published post in two places. You can do it view post right here, or you always have a view post button right here. So let's see what it looks like on the front end of our blog right now. All right. So after you've done that, congratulations. You have published your first piece of content in WordPress.org. Now, the only other thing I want to show you, and then we're going to wrap up this video, is the difference between posts and pages. So this whole visual editor we've been looking at is the visual editor for a brand new post, meaning in most cases blog post. So it's your new sort of everyday, constantly changing content. If you want to write a page though, you go over to pages over here, and then you click on add new. And then you're going to see a visual editor screen that is almost identical to the one for posts. There are just really two tiny little differences. And one of them is that you don't have categories over here, and the other one is that you don't automatically have comments open for your pages, because most people don't want to comment on things like your about page or your contact page. They're going to usually want to comment on your posts. So those are the two big differences. Other than that, everything that I've just taught you under posts is exactly the same for pages. And I already showed you in the last video that if you'd like to create a piece of content, like an about page or bio, a services page, something like that, you need to go through two steps to add it to your site. You've got to create the page, and then you've got to go under appearance and menus in order to add it to your navigation bar. So if you need to go back now and review that, now that you know how to set up a page, go ahead and do that. So you need to take that step of adding it to the navigation bar. So this has been our step-by-step tutorial through hopefully everything you need to know about the visual editor. If there's anything I've missed, anything that was confusing in there, of course, let me know in the Facebook page. In our very last sort of little mini lesson in this module, we're going to do a couple little WordPress odds and ends that I want to show you just to wrap things up. And then we're going to do your sort of security briefing for WordPress and for other blogging platforms too. So hopefully you've gotten something good out of this tutorial. Let me know if you've got questions in the Facebook group, and I'll see you in the next video.